Hello, is that you?
There, I think I got it. We got to agree sometimes.
I think most of the time we do.
I don't think so. I think sometimes we don't agree. I've already hit the button.
I agree with that.
I've hit the button now.
I agree with that. I agree that we disagree sometimes.
We disagree, but we disagree in a philosophical way. I think we enjoy not necessarily agreeing with each other about every subject.
I'm going to argue that right there is a central part of a real friendship, no matter how you define it. If you only ever agree with your partner or your friend, then how are you balancing out all that good energy? Because it all comes from, we've talked about this. How many times have we talked about balance?
Yeah.
Right? Are we on a fireside chat?
This is a fireside chat. We're a minute in
fireside
now. Number 21.
21. I'm still incredulous that we're 20. That's just unbelievable. That's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of hot air.
That is a lot of hot air.
A lot of hot air for everyone out there. So thank you for being part of a mother's life and for joining us on these discussions and tirades and debates and clashes of philosophy.
Well, you know what we got to do. Well, you know what we got to do is we got to give a shout out to Derek in Birmingham, Alabama. To
Derek in Birmingham. All right.
Because he's going to be on the podcast probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Sometime we'll hear this. We'll hear his episode, and he reached out to me because he didn't necessarily agree with some of the things that the NMRA is doing, but not in a negative way. I think it's important to talk to the 30-somethings to find out what it is they think the pluses and minuses of the NMRA is. Otherwise, they're never going to get anywhere. And he reached out to me with a very well written email, very kind of the opposite of John Dorings, who's the Eastern director of on the board of directors of the NMRA. And John has written a very good email that we've read parts of. And Derek reached out to me with the opposite. But then in our conversation of getting him ready and checking his sound, he was saying how much he enjoyed Uncle Dave's Fireside Chats. And wow. I went, my Uncle Dave? Like the one that we talked to here?
Well, it's always very flattering to hear that, and I'm grateful that people find our discussions salient and that they find what we have to say and the way that we sort of, like you said, agree to disagree. I think there's a lot of important things that we discuss. And you mentioned, John Doring and his email. I think you've been a little too heavy-handed with the NMRA. I think you've been a little too heavy-handed with other podcasts. Just to be clear, you and I can have these conversations. I think this is part of what makes our relationship special. Okay. Is that now I can disagree with it all I'd like. It's still your podcast and you're going to do it the way you see fit. I'm not saying that there aren't things that can be improved. And I think I agree with Derek from the limited contact we talked about already. But that being said, I think there's been some real positive changes in the NMRA's approach to things. Look, would we like to see a welcome email right away? Yeah. But the whole thing is a process. And there's been a long history of not the same kind of progress that we've seen in the last couple of years. I think Gordy's done an amazing job so far. I really do. I think other podcasts that copy what you're doing I think it's great. I think all of this stuff builds the energy behind the hobby, and I think that's a good thing. But I can also appreciate where you're coming from.
Well, and I'm not sure anybody knows where I'm coming from because I haven't really said anything as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's a free country. Everybody can have a podcast.
That's true.
Right? I mean...
and everybody can have opinions on their podcast. And that's the thing. I think that's the thing that I think maybe is not being seen or understood. And look,
I think
I don't think you've ever shot me down because of have we had some disagreements? Yeah. Do we agree to disagree? I think we do that on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
But does that not make this better?
That's the best part of our friendship, is that I don't feel like I have to censor myself when I talk to you.
Hey, I think we're very clear with each other. And look, you are a friend of mine. I can't tell you how much I respect what you do for the foundation with the Cancer Center up there in Toronto. And that's the Princess Margaret Foundation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a Princess Margaret Hospital. And that's a classic example. I don't need any praise because I don't think it's that big of a deal. My attitude is, they saved my life. Maybe I should do something in return. Like that's the extent of my thought process.
But the thing is that your thought process is from your perspective. What you just said is something that most of us can't put our fingers on. We don't understand what it's like to have stage 4 cancer, right? Now, I do, because I experienced it through the loss of my mom, as we've talked about before. So you and I have a synergy with this, and it's very personal, right? But it doesn't change the fact that there's a bunch of people that are part of this community, part of the model railroading community, that listen to what we say and think about it in the context of their world, their life, their experience. Everybody's pain is very personal, and what everyone's been through, I think, matters a lot to those people, right? But they experience what you say and what I say through their lens. And so it's not about what we say. It's about what other people hear, what other people feel a part of.
Yeah, I guess maybe, I don't know. I know you and I have talked about this, but I mean, or maybe we haven't even talked about it to this degree. The thing that disappointed me about myself when I got cancer was how scared I was, and how much of a blubbering ball of goo I was. And the people at the hospital were very matter of fact, understanding, and took care of me when they could have easily excused me as just a blubbering ball of goo. And yet these are people that had, okay, it was their jobs, but I've been to other hospitals where they don't treat you half as well. And, and it's like, because of the way they treated me, it's just seemed like a natural evolution to do something in return as a thank you. It wasn't some sort of grand plan or anything like that. It just felt like if I don't at least give them a bouquet of flowers, then I'm just completely ignoring all the kindness and humanity that they gave me. And so I just simply started raising money for the psychiatry department, because they get the least amount of funding. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the worst part of cancer. So then I just started doing it. And it's not that big a deal. It's just not that big a deal. Like, it's,
See, the thing is, it's not a big deal to you because you lived through stage 4 cancer. It is a big deal to other people. What you do, Lionel, on your podcast, when you raise money for Princess Margaret, right? When you offer your edgy suggestions to the NMRA. Okay. But what you say matters, my friend. It matters. People take what you say because you're a leader in the hobby.
Well, then
you didn't choose that. You earned it.
Well, then it's a good thing I speak up then, isn't it?
Well, I agree.
I mean, it seems to be...
what you need? You need a media consultant. You know what? Let me be your social media director.
But if you did that, but then it would be every. But then every.
Oh, are you kidding? Are you kidding? I am totally kidding, because you do not need a civil engineer to be your media director. No. I was totally joking.
But you came up with a great name for this year for riding the bus and riding transit. Transit Quest 2024.
Transit Quest 2024. Everybody can still donate to this quest. Okay. And I think Lionel can put it as part of the description of this podcast when it goes up, assuming this is on the public channel. And I cannot tell you, I mean, having lost my mom to cancer when I was in high school, the psychological effects of this disease are, it's almost impossible to describe how difficult it is to be told someone so close to you is on their final approach, is on the restricting signal into the yard, or whatever you want to say to, however you want to caveat that whole thing.
Before you go on, can I just say this? And then we'll actually finish your point, and then I'll say my point.
Well, my point is that whether it's you that has to deal with a terminal illness personally, whether it's people around you, or whether it's you because of someone close to you, look, it's supposed to be hard. It's okay. And this is why, what I wanted to say, to be honest, is that, I know you're disappointed in yourself because you were scared. I'm going to argue that makes you human. And I really feel that everyone needs to understand that it's okay when you're scared. It's okay when you're upset. It's okay when you feel ticked off because someone else is stealing your thunder, or you missed an opportunity, or, name whatever it is that's driving you nuts tonight, right now, when you're listening to this for the first, or this morning, for the first time. That's human. It doesn't matter what happens to you. What matters is what you do after it happens to you. Do you find a way to keep going, or are you going to let it make you jaded and negative and upset? It's a choice. Every moment is a choice. Absolutely. So anyway, I'll get off my horse for a second.
So I just wanted to say to you, because you said, about your mom and, the final signal and all that. If when my time comes, you make any kind of a train reference to my passing, I will the ghost of me will come down and derail every single one of your locomotives on the Onondaga cutoff.
All right. I have to say,
if you say anything like one last toot toot before into the big or something like that, I will literally send the ghost of Lionel Strang will come down and derail every single one of your locomotives.
I am very my kids are blessed. They are the most. I'm jealous of my kids. They have wonderful real uncles, and they have wonderful friend uncles. One of their friend uncles is Uncle Rich, who is a family member. He's essentially a family member. He's a wonderful guy, and everyone here knows him as the Wiz. Rich, this is a direct message to you. Do not make any references when Lionel moves on with his clear signals to the west. Don't say it in an OC operating session. We can't have any more derailments. No more.
No, none of that.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you.
So what is it? What is this that I've supposedly? Oh, and before we go, before we move on. Not only will I derail every one of your locomotives, but I will derail every one of Rapido trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
Each one of those locomotives I will also derail.
Are you going to turn the lights off too?
Yeah, I'll flicker them so you know it's me.
They have Mo Power now,
Mo Power?
I am so thrilled about Mo Power, more power.
Yeah. What's Mo Power? What is that?
It is Rapido's custom design circuit to keep locomotives alive when they hit dirty track or a dead spot for a second or two.
Right. And they call it Mo Power?
Mo Power. And I will tell you, Jason, Josh, Jordan, Bill, all you guys, Bobby Allard, all you guys. I am so thrilled. Janet, if you're listening, I appreciate Mo Power as much as anything I've appreciated that's come out of Rapido. I love what Rapido's done for the hobby. I love how they're pushing the envelope. I love how they're accountable for their mistakes. And I love how they're always trying to continuously improve the quality, continuous quality improvement. It's a central theme. I think, in the hobby. The only thing you could have improved about the Conrail B36-7s is to put a capacitor in there to keep it running. Mo Power is that capacitor. I am so excited for these C30-7s, the C36-7s, and hopefully, what is it, Lionel? What is it?
The C30-7A.
Yes, yes. I think I may have. That's it. I think I may have succeeded.
And how
if
do you
know what I'm looking for, then we are 100% on the right track.
And how do you spell A? E-H. E-H.
Oh, that's clueless New Jersey. This is what happens.
It's Canada, eh? Kick saving a beauty, eh?
Touche. Touche. All right. But I look, I love the rolling conversation that we have, and I do think it's an honest exchange. This is one of those things that you and I got started. You're like, nope, I pushed the button already. I'm like, all right, well, here we are. Might as well have our usual honest conversations.
Well, yeah, because lots of people, it's refreshing. It's not just how to ballast track or how to operate trains. It's life.
Are you making fun? You're making fun of my Patreon channel.
No, I'm not. I think it's good. It's a good channel.
I'm disappointed now. I'm just kidding.
Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
All right. So what is this horrible thing that I've said about the NMRA that apparently you're privy to?
I'm privy to. Look, dude, all I know is I see what pops up on my Facebook feed like everybody else anymore. And I saw that Gordy Robinson, who's the president of the NMRA, was frustrated by some conversation about an email that I guess you want people to get when they sign up for the NMRA, which I don't think is unreasonable, right? But there was a lot of discourse about it. I thought, my gosh, like, this guy's done a heck of a lot in a couple of years. I'm pretty sure that eventually they'll figure the email out. That's not why people are not joining the NMRA to get an email to say, welcome to the NMRA. It's a nice thing, but I don't think it's worth making a big deal about.
Well, I think the problem is people aren't joining the NMRA. That's kind of the problem. They're losing as many people as they get, and they eventually, it's like to Gordy's credit, before he showed up, all they did was lose people. And the membership numbers continued to slide downward. Once Gordy showed up, it changed, and he at least got the membership numbers to stabilize. And
which is a pretty big deal.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And I don't even know how that conversation started, other than I guess somebody said it somewhere along the line, because for years, for decades before Gordy, was the board of directors, just kind of let it sit. And I've been part of those people, and it was a closed club, and they're trying to make it, and somehow the NMRA board takes a lot of abuse. But you may disagree or agree with me, but if you decide, volunteer or not, if you decide to be in charge of a particular group or foundation or club or whatever it is, if you decide to be in charge, then you need to be in charge. You can't just show up and go, well, I'm going to make things better. Things have to get better. And under Gordy, things have slowly gotten better. And he is...
slowly. Lionel, hold on. They've gotten much better. Much better. I mean, how could anyone argue that it hasn't gotten much better? And compared to the last 70 or 80 years, this is the first time that the organization has been responsive to anybody online. And this is one place where I think you've been a real leader, right? Is to push the social media. Social media has blown this whole thing wide open. The NMRA is a big, cantankerous, bureaucratic organization, because anytime you get a bunch of people involved in anything, it's big and bureaucratic. And here we are, right? It's not going to change in 5 years. with every detail that you want to see. I don't think anybody's arguing that we shouldn't have some way for the NMRA to welcome new members, right? But the point is that all of this takes time. It's a pain in the butt.
It takes a certain
right?
amount. It takes a certain amount of time. It would be like me saying, we play this goofy game because I'm lousy at it. We have this goofy thing called, "Hey dude, where's my shirt?" Well, on the surface it's funny, but in reality it's pathetic because people belong to the Modeler's Life Patreon channel. They sign up at the t-shirt level, and sometimes it takes them longer than it should to get their shirts. And okay, we can make a joke about it, but the reality is it's pathetic. It's poor service. It's not done right. You've taken people's money. You need to do a better job. You can't just say, "Well, I'm doing my best." Everybody says they're doing their best. Well, sometimes your best isn't good enough. And in this particular case, Gordy, who's, trying his best, and there's lots of great people, Riley Triggs and Andy Zimmerman and Gert Muller and John Doring, and the list goes on and on and on of people who are trying desperately to save the NMRA. But that's the mode they're is in saving mode. Well, and somehow people have gotten off track by going, "Hey, there's a guy over there saying we're not sending out the welcome message early enough." That's your biggest problem? I don't think I'm your biggest problem.
I'm going to argue that all of this is still being written. I do not think that what's going on right now at the NMRA, and again, you got to let experts be experts in life. Gordy, I think, has been a great choice for president. I'm going to argue that the international groups are doing amazing work. I think, just talking with Jim Homoki here in New Jersey, there's some real positive change that's going on. It is a growing organization. It is what it's going to be, right? It's still the NMRA. It's not a bunch of private little layouts doing private layout things. It's not a collectors association. It's the National Model Railroad Association. Standards are vital. The camaraderie, the fellowship that it can create at conventions, either local, regional, or national, is vital stuff. Gordy, to me, has had some great ideas on how to integrate that with some of the bigger shows. Like when you look at Springfield, for example, like the way that the NMRA embraced Springfield last year, I thought was spectacular. And we saw lots of integration, lots of people, lots of positive contact. To me, the negative stuff, the drama and the hard feelings that come from, again, any organization people are ever in, that stuff happens by itself. Our goal is to make sure that we're focusing enough on the positive that you find the balance to what's going to be negative. Sometimes in life, you're going to feel excluded. Sometimes in life, you're going to feel like you got the short end of the stick, or you something else came up and you couldn't be part of something, and you have the fear of missing out of something great, right? That's just life. It's not personal. It's just what happens. What happens to you, you can't necessarily control. What you need to do is figure out how you're going to respond. Are you going to show up next year? Are you going to re-up your membership? Are you going to volunteer? That's, if you want to make a difference, that's how you make a difference. You have to be involved.
We better get another commercial out of the way. Rapido Trains.
It's still your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
So
every time.
So do you want to play hardball on this podcast, or should we just let it slide?
I think we've played some hardball already.
I think I got a pretty good pitch that's going to come in pretty close to your chin.
Okay.
You want it?
It would not be the first time.
All right.
It probably won't be the last.
Okay. So why don't you belong to the NMRA?
Because I'm working on it.
You're 40, what, 8?
7. See?
How many years in the 47 years you've been alive have you belonged to the NMRA?
I don't want to misquote it. 2 or 3.
Okay, so So
when
why?
I heard that the national convention, this is, maybe I haven't told the story yet.
Yeah,
When
you told me the Philadelphia story.
the Valley Forge story.
Yeah, the Valley Forge story.
Did I tell you that one?
You told me, but I don't think you told the world.
Oh my God! Well, let's go over that quick because it's actually an interesting example for the discussion at large here. So, my parents, man, I miss them both. Tremendous. I can't tell you how much I miss them, and it ebbs and flows, I think, as losses do. But I genuinely miss both of them at different times. But they were both people that pushed my brother and my sister and myself to do the best we could. And we were encouraged to be part of multiple activities and church groups. And, but both of my brother and I did Boy Scouts. We both actually ended up following it all the way through and becoming Eagle Scouts. We both did marching band and concert band and choirs. And I played basketball and just so on and so forth. So in the high school years, you're busy as heck. You're doing all these different things. So I'm watching the pages of Model Railroader, and I come up, at some point here in high school. This is early 90s. So I am obsessed with trains while I'm forced to cut grass at grandma's house. I'm forced to cut grass at our house, weed the gardens, clean the toilets, go to Boy Scouts, go to CCD church groups, practice basketball, go to bands, all this stuff. You think I'm busy now. I think I was probably even busier back then. And the National Model Railroad Association, which to me, like, you're all, again, my only contact with the model railroading hobby was Model Railroader, and occasionally Rare Model Craftsman. If I saw something I loved, I was only allowed to subscribe to one magazine. So MR would show up. It was like Christmas Day once a month. I'd open it, I'd tear through it, color photos first, stories second, editorials third or fourth. I would, by the time the next magazine came, the one was totally worn out. I'd cut pictures out and hung them on the wall. I was all in. And there's an advertisement. It says, National Model Railroad National Convention, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. I'm like, Pennsylvania? Well, that's right next door. That can't be too far away. So I pull out the encyclopedias and start to look about Valley Forge. And I heard of it because of the American Revolution and the battles and the war staging that had happened in that area back in the 1700s. And then I got out the Delorme. Remember the Delorme Gazetteers, those books with the red on the top and the bottom? Remember those? And they always had what you wanted to see on the borders of the books. Like, I think rail fans are just consigned to be third or fourth fiddle in life. Like, just how we're wired. And you open these books and they're these beautiful, unbelievable maps, topographical maps with everything. The railroad lines on there are these tiny, thin lines. But whenever you want to see Pittsburgh or Allentown or Philadelphia, like, it's like, why does this have to be on the edge of a page? You have to turn over to see the other half of the city. And trying to do that in a complicated place is a nightmare. So anyway, long story short, because my stories are always short, I found Valley Forge. I said, holy moly, it's like 100 miles away. This is a slam dunk. Even my parents, if I cut enough lawns, if I'm doing everything I need to do, I'm going to be able to get to Valley Forge. I think it's 1990. I don't know. You could probably, I don't have it in front of me. You could probably Google it and find it, but 92, 93.
Yeah, it was somewhere in there. I think I actually went to that one.
It wouldn't, I mean, because everybody went to these because it was the national show, right? And here I am living at the time 25 miles from Tony Custer, Perry Squire. Ted Pamprin didn't have a layout at this point. I'm finding out in hindsight. I'm 35 miles from Harold Worthwine. I'm living in an area where it's one of the rare areas where you've got dozens of operating layouts within an hour drive. And I don't even know it. I have no idea. I'm reading these magazines. I'm reading about the Allegheny Midland. I'm reading about the V&O. I'm reading about, the Utah Belt in St. Louis, but I thought it was in Utah because it's the Utah Belt. Like, this is a young kid's perspective on the hobby through the pages of Model Railroader. I had no idea, right? And here's the national convention just 100 miles away. And I find out that my parents have signed me up for the National Boy Scout Convention, the Jamboree in Fort A.P. Hill, Virginia. And like, I would have been excited about that had I not already seen what was happening the same week.
Wow.
And I was so disappointed. My parents told me, and I looked at the calendar and I said, but guys, I don't want to go. And they're, what do you mean you don't? It's the Boy Scout, it's Fort A.P. Hill. They're going to have a flyover. And I'm like, but it's, I wanted to go to the national convention for model trains. And they're like, what? Why would you want to go to some convention for model trains when you can go to the Jamboree for the Boy Scouts? And I'm like, but I wanted to go to the model. So it was one of those epic family, like Abelese family dramas that for the next couple of days, I was so upset. And so we packed our bags and we went to Fort A.P. Hill. And I remember crossing over the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac, the RF&P main line. On the drive out, we drove down 95 in a big charter bus, met a bunch of kids. At least my brother was with me, so that was cool. And I had a good time. But the whole time I was thinking about what was going on at this convention in Valley Forge. We drove right by it to get down to where we were going because it was, again, the Jamboree that year was in Fort A.P. Hill in Virginia. And oh my God, I'll never forget it. The NMRA back then for me was the organization. It's the only national. I mean, again, I'm a kid. I'm reading it in a magazine. Well, there's this show, there's that show, there's this club, there's this, but the National Model Railroad Association. Think about what that means to a kid of 8 or 10 or 12 years old.
Absolutely, I understand for sure.
And the fact that it was finally in my back, literally like 100 miles away, figuratively my backyard. And I couldn't go because I was going to a Boy Scout camp out. Oh, I mean, the Boy Scout camp out was cool. It is the only time I've ever seen my favorite ever fighter planes in flight.
So am I to take from this that the reason you don't belong to the NMRA is because it's your dad's fault?
No. See, my long story short ended up distracting me like it always does. So to finish it, I was hoping you would ask what kind of fighter planes there were, but you didn't.
Well, because, all right, what kind of fighter plane? They were F-16s.
No.
14.
No, it's an F. Yes. Now we're talking. If you don't like F-14 Tomcats, then you just don't like aviation.
Well, it was my second guess. I'm Canadian. Our entire entire submarine fleet is in the Edmonton Mall.
Well, fair enough. So long story longer. I'm just going to start. I should just start saying that. I think that's a lot more true than long story short.
Well, your stories are pretty interesting.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the listeners for bearing with me as I go off on these long tangents. But later on, when I first hosted an open house with the Garden State RPM, for a couple of years, there was a Garden State railway prototype modelers meet. And then it went away, and then it came back. And in one of those iterations, when Susie was very young, I'm thinking 2013, 2014, the guys had their meet down in Clark, New Jersey, right by the railroad line, actually there. And I joined the NMRA. I don't remember if it was a 1 or 2 year membership, but I joined because I wanted to have an open house. And I knew that one of the things from reading about it back in my teenage years, when I wanted to go to the national convention, one of the perks is that there's an insurance policy that goes with it, that regardless of how messed up your staircase is or how small your Keebler Elf factory may be, from recent memory on a certain podcast.
That's a big Keebler Elf factory.
That they would offer insurance if you were a member for open houses. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. That's worth joining up by itself. And so I joined the NMRA. But then we had another baby. Work got crazy. I'm building the layout. I'm sure I missed an envelope in the mail and so on and so forth. And that was that. So I've definitely been a member of the NMRA before, and I certainly plan on joining up again. And I actually just talked to Jim Homoki, our Garden State Division, I think he's a Garden State Division guy. And he's actually the recent elected leader of the division.
Oh, really?
He had a beautiful layout, and we've talked on the podcast with him before. His house burned down a year and a half ago. Maybe it's only a year ago, but this is a guy that had a beautiful layout, great modeler, and sure enough, he lost the whole house in this fire by a stroke of luck and some pretty serious miracles. He was able to recover almost every model on the railroad, including a bunch of structures.
Wow.
And we all went over to help. We carried it all out. We dried it out. And my understanding is a good chunk of it is ready to go when he gets his new railroad up and running in his new house, which is actually closer to me here in Lebanon and to Jerry Diedzik and others. So it's another great New Jersey layout, I think, that's in the making, which is very exciting. But I talked to Jim just a couple weeks ago, and I said, look, I like some of the stuff Gordy et al. Are doing. Why should I join the NMRA locally? I said, I don't even know how it works. Do I join locally? He's like, well, yeah, you join locally, and that opens up the doors to all the national conventions. You can actually walk into any meet anywhere with a membership. And I said, that's kind of cool. And I said, is there a print magazine? We talked about some of the things that, I've heard about vicariously here through the podcast and on the Facebook airwaves. And I think joining the NMRA is it's in my future. I don't know when, but I think sooner than later. And you yourself said, at some point, Dave, you should join the NMRA. It's a good thing to belong to, with a name that's growing and with stuff that's in the magazines. It puts your best foot forward. And you make a good point.
But then you got to look at that's kind of the whole point of the argument. It's kind of like you're 47 years old and you've been an avid model. You're probably the most avid model railroader that I know. I've said that to people ad nauseum. There's nobody with more enthusiasm about model railroading and railroading in general than Uncle Dave Abelys. But you've seen no real reason to belong to the NMRA. And you make a couple of comments about the way it's run, and all of a sudden, you're the bad cowboy coming into town to shoot up the tavern. And it's kind of like, I haven't really said anything other than, gee, it'd be cool if they'd send out an email. Like, I don't understand how they can't send. All right, so it's not that big of a deal. I think what really frosted their nuts was that I said that the NMRA was like the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, that is a pretty low blow. But that's like saying that they're like the New York Giants, which is just as low a blow. And look, I think one of the points here is that all of us collectively have to take a deep breath and realize that this change is positive. Obviously, we've stabilized things. And I say we like I'm a member, which is not the case yet. But you're a member, correct? And certainly Bruce, the mail boy, is a member. Many AML members are also members of the NMRA. Gordy obviously has been on the podcast a bunch of times. Like this is all energy in the right direction. It's not going to change on a dime. It's not a small business. This is something I was reading about in magazines when I was 12 and 13 and 14 years old. None of this is going to change on a dime. I'm going to argue that it's had more change in the last 4 or 5 years than it probably has in its entire existence.
That's possible. I don't know. I guess I'm not necessarily seeing the change other than the magazine is now online. I'm not exactly sure what change I'm seeing anymore.
Well, you said it yourself. It's stabilizing.
Well, it's stabilized,
Lionel,
absolutely.
But that's a big change, my friend. Think about it.
But okay, but I know a lot of people that have joined the NMRA because of listening to this podcast.
And that's great.
So the fact that maybe I don't necessarily agree with every possible way, everything that they're doing, I'm not exactly sure makes me the bad guy, because
you are a bad guy.
I understand that.
No, look, I think we all have to laugh about this a little bit. Everybody needs to get a beer. That's what we need to do. We need to relax a little bit here. let things settle in. There's going to be some criticism. But what you say as the leader of the AML, a long-time name in the hobby, an iconic name in the hobby, I would argue. Everybody knows who Lionel Strang is. You can like it or not, but you know who you are, right?
Sure, I
What you
know
say
who I am.
matters. What you say, everybody does. Well, everybody knows the name. The point is that name immediately people recognize the name, and therefore what you say matters a lot. And so when you make a criticism, people are going to notice, and it's going to ruffle some feathers. I don't think that that's necessarily the end of any roads. It certainly shouldn't be the cause for any drama. The point is, we got to get there, but we can't harp on these things. One of the tough things, one of the dark sides of social media is when someone, especially a leader, makes a comment that says, oh, well, I think we should do this. And why can't we just make it better? And then, which is just a simple comment. It's one thing, right? But then there's 50 people that pile on. And so the whole thing can quickly get blown out of proportion.
Well, and I think the other thing that social media does, it gives people a platform because, I think a lot of people that belong to the NMRA love the NMRA. Like I always say, I'll be the last guy out of the room. Like if it doesn't survive, I'll be the guy turning out the lights. I'll always belong to the NMRA because I've referred to the experience I had when I was 13 years old of being with Lynn Westcott, and my dad won a lunch with Lynn Westcott and 7 or 8 other people. And I got to meet Lynn before the lunch. And then he said, well, I'll see you at lunch. And, my dad explained to him I didn't win a chair. And like Lynn Westcott wouldn't have any part of me not being part of that particular luncheon. And I mean, how many people get to say they had personal interaction with Lynn Westcott, who's just a name in the hobby that's legendary.
Legendary. Yep.
Legendary. And I mean, sure, it was an hour and a half or 2 hours of my life, but it's something I'll never forget. And it's, you kind of go forward from there. And, I guess part of the problem I see that I'm a little concerned about with the new set of board of directors and what have you is that they're afraid of criticism. And it's kind of like, all I ever said was,
but Lionel, everybody these days is afraid of criticism. It's not about the criticism per se. It's about how it's presented and what people do to make the change. I'm going to argue off the bat that we all need to be a little more open to criticism. All of us, NMRA, AML, you, me, everybody. Because one of the hard parts about this whole thing is that it's very personal for all of us. This is something we do with our volunteer time. It's something we do because we love it. We believe in it. We are most of us, our whole lives is wrapped up in this. And I think that's where the biggest change is happening. Again, when I was 12 or 13, the NMRA was what I read about. And it was the only national name in the whole magazine, as I recall anyway, in my it's a long time ago. Today, that's not the case. Today, you can do the AML Patreon channel. You can do the Onondaga Cutoff Patreon channel. You can buy your trains from online hobby shops or some local hobby shops that still remain. But you can operate in a bunch of local places and you can find everybody through the internet. So the whole genre of model railroading is growing and changing. That's a huge seismic change for Kalmbach, right? For White River Productions, for the old Carson's publishing company, for the National Model Railroad Association. Lynn Westcott, if he were still alive today, you could send him a Facebook message. Yeah. So, think about the change that is a revolutionary, different approach to the hobby. You can actually, when I want to be in touch with somebody that I have a lot of respect for, I find a way to get in touch with them. I send them a message. Sometimes they get back, sometimes they don't. But in most cases, they get back. And that is unprecedented accessibility for people at the top of the hobby. And it's wonderful. It's a great experience. But the NMRA, which used to be the meeting ground for those names, now has to compete with a bunch of other meeting grounds. So the whole role of the NMRA, I think, is changing. And that's part of what Gordy must be wrestling with. Is that it's not the same old. It's not, let's just do it the way it was, or let's just grow membership. Well, no.
And it's not all Gordy's responsibility. It's everybody's
I agree.
responsibility.
It is, and that was the next place I was going to go. I agree.
It's my responsibility to speak up, whether and take the risk that people aren't going to necessarily agree with what I have to say, but it's still my responsibility to speak up and go, things. And I understand it gets very tiring to hear people complain about the work you're doing. I totally get that, and I feel bad for some of the people in the NMRA where they're trying so hard, but it's like you really need to stop and think, like, what exactly did Lionel say? Like, I really didn't say much of anything.
Well, but you're a leader, and when leaders criticize, even if it's well intended, it hurts, right? This is a new regime. This is not the same old guys that were there and refuse to acknowledge the changing world. So when you say something, look, when you criticize what I'm doing, it hurts. It hurts.
Well, then I won't criticize you ever again. Let's get straight here. I'm not.
That's not what I'm asking for.
I'm not the only person criticizing people. And again, that's the problem. You're making it sound like, well, I'm sitting here, and all I do is spend 24 hours a day writing out nasty emails and criticizing.
That's not what I'm saying, and that's not what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but that's what you're talking about. It's the new world. That's what you've just said. Is we're talking about me criticizing. Well, that's, I think, part of what the problem with today's NMRA is. It's not 1985 anymore. Like I've said, do away with the divisions. Like get virtual.
Those are big changes, and we'll see. We'll see. All of those things are on the table because it's a different world now. You finally have leadership there that is young enough and dynamic enough to see that to know that the world has changed. But just like you and I have arguments about these things and disagreements, look, sometimes we agree to disagree. Most of the time we find enough common ground, and I know you hate that term, but the point is that it all works out because we all love modeling railroading.
Okay, but let me take it to let me ask you in a different way. You don't see any urgency to join the NMRA. You haven't seen any urgency to join the NMRA for 30 years. So, I mean, that's the problem they're facing. Since 1995, you haven't seen any urgency to join the NMRA. And it's not just you. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people, model railroaders, thousands upon thousands upon thousands.
I think it's in the hundreds of thousands.
Exactly. If one out of every 1,000 people is an avid model railroader, like a really serious, eat, sleep, and drink it, out of 1,000 people, that's 350,000 people in the continental United States, and that are super avid model railroaders. Well, they've only got 16,000. They don't even have 1% of that population as their membership.
Yeah, but look at who subscribes to the magazines. There's not that many more that subscribe to the magazines. There's not that many more that belong to model railroad clubs. So my point is that when you have to pay to be part of a certain number of organizations, some people can afford it. Some people make it a priority, but there's a lot of people where every dollar counts. And I do not blame the NMRA for what they're charging for people to be part of it at all. I don't think it's unreasonable at all, given what you get back for it. But you have to go to the shows to get something back. You have to be involved. We've said it. We've seen it all over the internet, and I think it's one of those old adages in life: you get out of it what you put into it. But one of the things. Oh my God. One of the things that's blowing my mind is watching families around me have their kids in 3 or 4 traveling sports in every season of the year. These kids are playing softball in the fall. They're playing football in the summer and the spring. They're traveling over state lines and 8, 10, 12 years old to have a championship meet. And it's, guys, you're driving yourself to distraction here. like that's time. And hey, do what you want to do with your family. Everybody's family is up to them. But I can tell you that for most of history, putting your time into your kids to not involve, 15, 20 weekends a year paying for a hotel room while you go watch them have yet another championship game. I mean, what are we doing? Like, what happened to having your kids just play? Get on the bike and go ride someplace and, go play football at the park or what have you, baseball at the park. It's so, and the only reason I mention this is that if all of those families are doing this, I know there's a bunch of model railroaders doing it too. That's all time. You don't have time to go to the shows if you're trucking your kids all over God's country. So it's right. It is a reflection of our time. So none of this stuff, my point is that none of this stuff changes on a dime. You're not going to blow membership through the roof. We have a bunch of people that don't have the time to take advantage of it. Not everybody is wired the way you and I are. Is different as you and I are. We grew up in an era when you weren't overbooked. There was no internet. There was no sign up for all of these, and there was no sport. Like you didn't have spring sports in the fall when I was growing up. Maybe in high school.
You didn't get to go to the NMRA convention in Philadelphia because you were overbooked.
I was in Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts
you were
always been there. But I wasn't on a softball convention for the 8th year in a row so that I could not play in college because I wasn't ever good enough.
Yeah, but that's just, that's.
Hey, I think it's a lot more pressure than it was before. I think a lot of parents and a lot of NMRA members are not 16-year-old kids.
Well, and the problem is most people under the age of 40 or 45 just don't see the use, because for some reason or other, the NMRA, they're trying to. I know everybody's trying, and I apologize if I ever criticize. I understand now that I'm not supposed to criticize the NMRA in any way.
No,
shape,
it's
or
not
form.
about that. But I think the fact that we're having an honest discussion here, it's not about whether you should have criticized or not. Look, you got to, if people don't dissent in their opinions of things, that's not an honest interpretation of what's going on. I don't think anybody has a problem with dissension.
Then what's the problem?
The problem is we need solutions.
No, okay.
Problems are very clear.
So here's a solution. Every time the model railroad ferry deposits $70 in the NMRA bank account, send me the name and address send me the email of the person, and I will send them out a welcome message.
Now we're talking. The AML could be the official welcome wagon for the NMRA. I love it. Now we're talking. Now I think that's a big ask, but
it's not a big ask. How long does it take you to cut and paste a standard message into an email?
Think a year from now, we'll find out because you'll be able to tell us.
I do it all the time.
Perfect. I love it. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, I will gladly volunteer my services to do that, but they won't. They won't take me up on it. Don't worry.
And they may not, and that's okay because they're the leaders. Let them figure it out. But the point is,
I guess the point you're missing is I care about the NMRA, and as far as I can,
I think you do a lot. Yes.
And as far as I can tell,
you wouldn't put an opinion out there if you didn't.
And as far as I can tell, it's not changing enough that eventually the lights are going to sink below the surface. And we'll all go, well, that was great while it lasted.
No, we thought that about Kalmbach too, right?
Well, and Kalmbach's gone.
But guess what survived?
Well, and model railroader survived, exactly.
The important parts.
Right. And I think
with all the original people for now. We'll see. Who knows what's going to happen? But hey, you can't predict the future. We'll see what happens. I think this kind of change that's going on right now at the NMRA is moving in the right direction. I really do. And we'll see what comes out of it.
Dave, only because you and I try to be as honest as we can on these Uncle Dave's Fireside Chats, because we enjoy the honesty. We enjoy showing people that you can have discussions and disagree. I would say this.
Concur. Okay.
You don't even belong. You can't even be bothered to stop and go online for 5 minutes, sign up, and send in your money. So it's kind of like it's not that important to anybody. You just don't see the importance of it, which is my whole. They keep saying, well, if you don't get involved, you're not going to get anything out of it. Well, lots of people belong to organizations where they just enjoy being part of the organization. Not everybody I haven't been to an NMRA meet in 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I still belong because I want to belong to the NMRA, because the NMRA is the umbrella that we live under. The NMRA is standards and conformances. The NMRA is, because of the NMRA, we have great regional conventions. So yeah, it's probably a lie. I've been to plenty conventions. So I've been to lots NMRA conventions over the last 15 years. I've been to several national events. And if it wasn't for the NMRA, there wouldn't be these national conventions or these great regional conventions that we have. And I love them. I love going,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't feel like I'm doing any. I just feel like, hey, the convention's there. I'm going to go because I like hanging out with my buddies at the convention.
Yep.
But if that's what the NMRA has. That's what they sell. That's what is the camaraderie, fellowship. And part of fellowship is communication. Communication is number one in anything you do. In my particular, I own my own business for 45 years because I can't take orders from people. And if I have an employee that's not,
Hey, all right, fair, yeah, okay.
If I have an employee that's not doing something, if I don't tell them, they're not going to know. You got to communicate.
And I think again, you're right. I'm not a member right now. I think that'll change over time. I can tell you that communication, regardless of who's a member, that's central.
Do you want me to send it? Do you want me to send you the $70? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's literally something I just haven't put a lot of thought into until a couple of weeks ago when Jim and I were talking in an operating session here in New Jersey. And I said, it was actually a Tony Custer operating session. And hey, I think it's the right thing to do here over time. And he says, well, let me know. We'll talk about it. I said, okay.
Speaking of Tony Custer, I'm jealous of your kids too.
Oh my God, dude, so am I.
I mean, come on. They got to operate at Tony Custer's.
Tony Custer's. And Tony invited him up on the platform to talk about it. Like for the little briefing that he gives ahead of the session. They stood next to Tony Custer. Unbelievable.
Can I ask you a question? Because I see that you and Ralph and Tom Schmieder and Rich and lots of the fellas I know get to go and operate on Tony Custer. Do you guys think you have any concept of? It's kind of like me and my Lynn Westcott thing. Do you feel like you guys have a concept of how privileged you are to be part of that?
I will tell you that having been born in New Jersey and not realized what that meant in the model railroading world, just as we've talked about now for an hour, right? I literally, Tom Schmieder literally pinched me and was like, do you realize where we are? And I'm like, we're in Tony Custer's basement. Like it's surreal. It's totally surreal to be surrounded by railroads that operate, and for one of them to be Tony's and another one to be Jerry's. I mean, those. So for a few minutes at this last operating session, I'm standing there, and there's Tony talking to Jerry Diedzik and me. Like, I'm the guy that read those articles for how many years, and here I am at Tony's Railroad talking to the two guys that currently write the columns for Model Railroader, and that's just par for the course at a Tony session. I can't tell you how in awe I am of the absolute privilege it is to be able to run with these guys on a regular basis. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and
it's unbelievable, and it sets the stage for so many cool things to come. It really does.
I see Pete's wearing his Rapido Trains T-shirt.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
You know what? I love David Hyde's jingles.
They're great.
I kind of love David Hyde too. I have to admit.
David is a lovely man.
Dude, he's a good dude, and musicians are just brilliant. There's a neat vibration that comes with people that are that in touch with an art, especially professional ones. It's unbelievable. Like I met, well, I've met a bunch of times before, but recently at a couple local operating sessions, Jerry Schaefer, who goes by Hunter Hugson and his Crosstown Pickup or what have you on Facebook. He's a Penn Central modeler. And so he and Jim Homoki have known each other for a long time through the Penn Central connection. And Ralph is friends with him. Tom's met him at a bunch of sessions too. And so he's sort of a regular guest to the New Jersey scene in the last couple of years. Nice guy, another musician. And there's just a real connection that I feel with people like that when I talk to them in person. But I love David's jingles. I never would have guessed that he put them together until I knew that he was Mr. Jingles, which now it all makes sense.
And I suggested to him a jingle for his Aviation Corner show, which we usually do on viewer mail. And I thought it would be to the tune of the Brady Bunch. And it would,
there you go.
Yeah, and it would go something like this. It's my corner about aviation and all the planes that fly around the sky.
You should stick to your day job.
I thought that was pretty good.
I think it is good. I'm just busting your balls.
Oh, okay.
But Mr. Jingles then in the Aviation Corner will know all about F-14s. He won't say that I like F-16s better.
I didn't say I like them better. I just was trying to guess.
Man. I mean, if you have a choice between an F-14 and an F-16, yes, I know that the F-14s are gone. I think that's mostly because Iran still has them. I don't think there's ever been a more beautiful fighter plane than the F-14 Tomcat. And yes, I'm a kid of the 80s, so I saw it early with Top Gun and all that. But man, there's nothing. I love it. I love the whole aesthetic of an F-14. I love it. I'm so happy I saw them. That's the one good thing that came out of going to Fort AP Hill.
You can get a family membership for just an additional $10 at the NMRA.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, so when you when you sign up,
well, yeah.
Let's see. You don't have to take the magazine. So it's $68 a year, or $136 for 2 years.
Somewhere I actually have my little card, my original NMRA card from high school.
Oh, for when you belonged for 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, someplace.
See, this is people are yelling at me, and you don't even belong. And I'm like, what did I do? They're mad because I compared the NMRA to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And by the way,
look,
let me just get some. Hang on. Let me just get. So you tried to make some lame comparison to the New York Giants. The New York Giants won the Super Bowl just 12 years ago. The Toronto Maple Leafs have not won a championship in 57 years. There's no comparison to the New York Giants.
It's true. It's true. But in the last couple of years, I can tell you, the Leafs at least had a chance. The Giants have not had a chance.
If we could get a goalie that could at least acknowledge that the puck is coming towards him.
Well, if we had an offensive line that showed up, at least, and didn't fall over on their own.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we would have a fighting chance too.
I can make it worse.
But I do appreciate you make a very good point. And this is the problem with being a sports fan in a place like New York, is that you're spoiled.
Well, sure. Well, I'm a Jets fan.
There's plenty of championships in the past, just none recently. That's all.
I'm a Jets fan, so it's even worse.
We'll see. They've got a great defense again this year. We'll see what happens.
I'm beginning to think I'm the common denominator here. I'm the problem. So let's talk about.
You always think that you're the center of the problem or the solution. What is it? What is it with you?
Let's face it. It's because I'm a strikingly handsome man for my age.
What country do you think this is?
Yeah, there you go.
What movie is it from? Although I don't mean to be Dave Ramos, who always wants to know what movie it's from.
I don't know. What movie is it from?
It's from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, okay. If I woke up tomorrow with my head sewn to the carpet, I couldn't be more surprised than I am right now. What movie is that from?
Well, that I don't know.
Christmas Vacation. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
I love the movie, but I don't remember that line.
That's
Fair enough.
It's when Eddie shows up.
That is one of those movies that my kids have seen it now once, and like you laugh the whole time. It is unbelievably good.
We watch it every single Christmas on Christmas Eve. It's a tradition.
I love it. We've watched it the last couple, not on Christmas Eve, but just in the season, And the other one is Elf.
Oh yeah,
my kids fell in love with Elf a couple of years ago, so we watched that one too.
That's an RV. But don't you go falling in love with it now, because we'll be taking it with us when we leave here next month. So let's get back to this thing where how did this all take place? That you two kids, Ted and Pete. Now, what are their ages?
Ted is 9 and Pete is 7.
Do you realize right now people all over the country, all over the world, are going, what? Two boys, 9 and 7, got to operate at the nickel plate on a Tony Custer operating session.
And I give a lot of credit to Ted Pamprin and to Jerry Diedzik, both of whom for the last year or so have been open to the boys coming when they had space. And Ted, I found out at Tony's session, part of his briefing was that Ted Pamprin said that, well, now Ted assured me that you'll notice 2 young boys here. These are Dave Abeley's sons, Teddy and Pete. And Ted has assured me that they're better than some of his regular operators. And so we thought we'd take a chance. And I was like, oh my God, I hope none of those people are here. Because, I love my sons, but there's a lot to learn when it comes to especially timetable train order operation. So they ran with somebody else. Teddy and I ran together for a while. Pete and I ran together for a while. But they both were paired up with other people during the session to do different jobs. And so it wasn't like they were running on their own. But it certainly was an absolute honor to have them there. And I'm very grateful for Tony putting up with it and taking a chance on them. And I think that they did well enough that I hope to get them back there someday too.
Well, so
but we're talking about Tony Custer's Railroad.
I understand.
How is it that I get to go to the whole thing is surreal, Lionel. It is. It is.
Do you think it's becoming more surreal because people have so much more access to it? I mean, if they go to the Onondaga Cutoff Facebook page, they're going to see a lot of really cool pictures of it. And, they're really great pictures showing the layout on its own, the overall essence of the layout. So, I mean, do you think people are even more, I don't know, awestruck or something? I mean, I'm looking at these pictures and I'm loving them. There's one looking down the long yard there and everything. And just, I mean, this layout is pretty well finished, eh?
We're getting there. The OC is probably 90% there. I would say Tony's is probably 95, 98%. I mean, he's very close. He's super detailing certain things, but he's still actively modeling. Every day of the week, he's doing something on that railroad. Every day of the week.
Well, I think model railroading keeps you young.
Well, one of the things that Harold Worthwine, another, he was sort of the grandfather of operations in New Jersey, and we talked about this, and this has been on a couple different podcasts now. But Harold's railroad needed like 30 people to run, big, huge railroad, and that's the railroad where a lot of the guys that currently operate met each other for the first time. Different invites, friends of friends. Oh, come on to Harold's. We can run trains there, and so. Back in the 80s, 80s and 90s, a lot of people met at Harold's. And as time has gone on, I think the magazines were the only real source of communication and camaraderie when it came to figuring out where the hobby was. And so Tony, being an editor over at RMC and having articles published in all the magazines over 25 or 30 years, was very much a trendsetter, a wisdom keeper, or just one of the standard bearers of the hobby. I mean, this is a guy that everybody knows his name anywhere in the world. He is an ambassador for the hobby. And as time went on and these operating sessions changed and other ones started up and grew, the standard bearer continued to be the standard bearer. So I think that there was the legend of the Allegheny Midland and what Tony has done. We talked about it when he was on A Mother's Life here too. The legend of it remains, but in modern times, the accessibility now, Tony's on a couple different email chat groups. You can send messages, his email is, you can Google it and his email comes right up. He's responded to emails 100 times a day. So the accessibility is much better now than it was back then. But when you add accessibility on top of legend, I think you have it's a full-time commitment that he's got to stay in touch with the hobby. And thankfully that's what he does full time. Well, so it works out pretty well.
Well, let me just say thank you for doing these fireside chats, because it gives everybody a lot of accessibility to Uncle Dave, and it gives people an opportunity. But through these honest discussions that we have, people get to know you better than they would have just by reading your articles or reading your books. I mean, we are in such a, you've said it before, such a golden age of the hobby. It's like, it's spectacular how things have changed. It
is spectacular. And what's hard for you and I, and for people our age, is that we saw it through a long time where it was a lot more. I mean, there's been a lot of good stuff, don't get me wrong, but this digital age where people want stuff now, it's changed perspectives, and that's the cross to bear for anybody who's at the NMRA right now. It's a big load to shift, and that's where the social media content that Lucy's doing and Gordy's push to make sure that he's been accessible to people, not just I think it's a very big shift in energy. I see it at NJ Transit.
Well, now I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's trying to get NJ Transit into a world where we run a railroad, right? And we do it with less people than other railroads and less money than other railroads, but we still deliver a service, right? At least we try to. Even trying to change NJ Transit to be more responsive in the age where everything's accessible all the time. It's a very heavy lift. It's not something that changes on a dime. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of time.
That's one thing that we absolutely have to make a note of is Gordy, the accessibility to Gordy Robinson is unprecedented in the history of the NMRA.
And that's to his credit, because he chose that.
Absolutely.
He chose that.
He makes himself so available to people. It's that is probably, if I had to pick one thing that has improved the NMRA dramatically, is the fact that the accessibility to Gordy and the board of directors like John Doring and Martin Jenkins and all the people that are involved at the high level of running the NMRA, hats off to these people for the ability to get to talk to them and interact with them either through social media or on the podcast or however. Hats off to these people. That's going to make a bigger difference in the NMRA than anything I can think of.
Look, I think it's obvious. I think it's already started. And while it's obvious to me because I pay attention to these things, the fact is it's better than it's ever been from that perspective.
Oh, by a mile.
And this is what I'm talking about. It's not sugarcoating it. These are facts. Are there things we would change? Yeah. But the fact of the matter is it's way better than it was a couple of years ago. If I could take everything in my life and say, hey, in 3 years, I'm gonna keep doing these things that I know are going to be way better. Well, then, I mean, who wouldn't sign up for that?
Exactly. And just imagine how much more accessibility you'd have to these people if you were actually a member of the NMRA.
Well, here's one of the challenges for the NMRA is that I do have accessibility to these people right now. But it's I think it's something that I'm going to do, especially as we start to do more open houses
tomorrow.
It's certainly in the next couple of weeks.
All right.
Yep. It's certainly, I think it's the right thing to do. I think having open houses is an important part of the hobby, especially for operating railroads. If you want to grow it, this is how you get some exposure. I was talking with Rich about it earlier today, actually. And the whole energy of it moves it in the right direction here. A little more accessibility, a little more visibility, and not just on Facebook, not just digital, but actually people coming to see the thing it's important.
I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm glad people got to see just that we're not just blowing smoke, that we actually do hold each other's feet to the fire, because I believe that's important. I wanted to talk about one last subject that I'm sure you'll want to talk about when I bring it up, although you don't necessarily always agree with me. And I love Rapido trains.
Sure. Me too. You're fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
Try to stay with me.
I saved it there. Yeah. You caught me off guard. Okay.
We recently lost a valuable member of the model railroading community. This will probably be broadcast in late September. So in early August, on August the 9th, Paul Dolkos passed away. And he first appeared in Model Railroader in 1973. Amazing. His first article appeared in Model Railroader in June of 1973. So he was in the pages of Model Railroader for over 50 years, just over 50 years.
Awesome.
Had you ever had the opportunity to visit with Mr. Dolkos?
Oh my gosh, several times. I operated on his railroad. He operated here on the Onondaga Cutoff. I met him probably a total of 7 or 8 times through Jerry Diedzik and some of the operating back and forth between New Jersey and Washington, D.C. areas. And an absolute gentleman, a legend in the hobby. He specifically wrote an article that I found when I was looking for how to light the area west of CP282 on the OC, where the track passes through the backdrop and heads down grade. Well, it's easy to do if you want a tunnel, right, or a highway bridge, but those two things don't exist in that spot on the prototype. And Paul's idea to put lighting and scenery on the other side of the backdrop through the hole so that it lights up the scenery with the same color temperature as the room lights. It's a wonderful optical illusion, and it's a standard process that I've used here on the OC in several cases. So Paul, he's a guy that I really look up to. His writing, his photography was always amazing. So many pictures that you remember in Model Railroader are Dolkos photos. He wrote articles on everybody else's railroads, and just a complete gentleman. He's somebody that we're going to miss dearly.
Oh, and his layouts were fantastic. But you're right. His second hobby was photography. So I mean, it's not lost on. Not only were the layouts absolutely beautiful, but the way he photographed them was spectacular. And he photographed many layouts other than his own throughout the years of 50 years. That's one of the things about this hobby. I mean, some of the icons in this hobby are they kind of leave you breathless. It's
amazing. And this is what we all have to keep in mind. We're going to disagree sometimes. You're going to disagree about, NMRA details or other podcasts or other magazines. Look, this is the reality of it, right? In the long run, who's going to do anything for 50 years? Like, hopefully all of us can. But the bottom line is the hobby is old. It's older than most hobbies, and it's only getting better. It's all of this stuff is in service of something far larger than what we deal with on a regular basis. The bottom line is that somebody like Paul Dolkos, who found a way to do it for 50 years and still be relevant, it's a testimony to the strength of character of the guy and to the fact that he truly had a gift in what's, without a doubt, in my mind, the greatest hobby in the world. It's unbelievable.
Do you ever get the sense, because I don't know if, like, I tell you this all the time, but do you ever get the sense of how much, like Paul had an incredible impact with people through the pages of Model Railroad. Like when his first article appeared in 1973, I was 19 years old. So, I mean, I've been watching his stuff since I was 19 years old over the last 50 years.
It's awesome. Yep.
Yeah. Like, and I mean, basically throughout my Model Railroad life. And do you ever get, and I think these people have such a huge impact. Like, do you ever get the sense of the importance of what you're doing? Like, I understand that people don't think model railroading is a big hobby. I think it's way bigger than people realize. And I think that people like the Dave Abeleys of the world make a huge impact on people. Do you ever get that sense? Do you ever feel the responsibility of that?
To me, it's a huge responsibility, but it's a responsibility that I've always wanted to be able to weave into my experiences in life. I'm going to go to my grave believing that bringing people together is always stronger than pulling them apart. Whatever my reasons are, I'm going to make my arguments. I'm going to be divisive when I feel I need to be. And I think that's a responsibility as well. Part of being human, part of being a leader is saying something when you think something's wrong, but appreciating the effect it has on other people and understanding that they hear through different ears than I speak through my mouth. They're going to hear something that I don't necessarily want them to hear. I have to tailor my message to get the results based on what I think is going to come back. And I think that this is where the Mother's Life has been so valuable to me, is that, I've been very fortunate to write a bunch of stuff in Model Railroader, write a bunch of stuff in Railroad Model Craftsman. There's some articles in the next few months that'll be out in both magazines, which is one. There's actually one this month in Model Railroader about weathering the Rapido turbo liner. But then, there's the Signal book. There's the Yard book that's coming up. I'm super excited about that. We didn't even get to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about that. Well, we got to, we'll do another Uncle Dave fairly quickly to talk about the Yard book again. That
would be good because there's a lot. It's exciting. It's very exciting. But that's coming out this fall as well. And what the podcast has done, specifically a Mother's Life podcast has done, is provide the deep dive background for those that are interested in what people are doing in the hobby in either print media or on Facebook. Facebook and print media those are basic sources, right? They're wonderful. They've been there for a long time. They've got a long future, in my opinion, in the hobby. But the podcast allows an hour or two of a deep dive conversation into stuff that matters. Why you're inspired, why you're passionate, what you disagree on, what you're excited about for tomorrow. The people that have impacted you, not just in a couple words, but an actual emotional, dynamic, live conversation. You and I come to this every time with no prep. And the results, I think, speak for themselves. I think these are great discussions. And the fact that they're recorded for posterity now, that someday my kids will graduate from college and stumble upon these interviews someplace buried on the internet. Like, I love my kids dearly, all three of them. I'm so excited. I'm so proud of them. I'm also aware that they make mistakes, and I'm going to work to make them more accountable, to be themselves, and to hope to help other people in the same way that if everyone was able to reach out and help everybody else a little bit, a lot of the problems of the world go away. It's okay to disagree. We're going to disagree. That doesn't make us enemies. It doesn't make us warlords. It's not a bipolar existence in life. There's a lot of people that wanted to make it that way. I passionately disagree. I think most people agree on most things, period. And that's the kind of thing, to me, the long strength of the AML has been that it allows that kind of communication so that people can resonate with other people that are involved with the podcast. And I'm very grateful for it.
What did you think?
That's why I have all my opinions, like we discussed earlier tonight.
Yeah, you were just basically yelling at me all night.
Oh yeah, because it's always about you. Yeah, exactly. It's not about your community. It's not about your leadership. It's about you.
You're What did I?
No.
Jeez. Did I step on your toes or something today, or what the heck?
No. You wanted me to be honest, so here we are.
That's true.
But I love that we can talk about this. Think about this. Think about, look, if you could have people that disagree have a conversation like this, and tomorrow we're going to wake up, we're going to go our daily routine. We'll text a couple times, and they'll have another recording at some point. And the green rooms never looked better because we're going to have another great conversation. This is what life is about. It's about coming together, even when you disagree. Who cares? Tomorrow we're going to wake up and it's going to be very much like it was today. Thank goodness for that.
I'm not texting you tomorrow because I'm mad.
No, it's all right.
I think these conversations are great. I had a topic. We got in like 4 weeks. We got to do another one so that we can talk about the book. So it'll come out around. Let's try to do one in like 4 weeks so that we can talk in depth about the book.
Yeah, I would love to. The book sounds like it's going to be available early November.
Okay, so that'd be perfect.
Yeah, so if we could do one in a couple of weeks, that'd be great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just send me a check for $242.63 and you'll be all set.
Well, you are a technical consultant.
Exactly. Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's HO, the fast track is Rapido.
Well, I think we've killed another hour and a half.
I remembered. There we go.
There you go. Well, you've done pretty good. I mean, it's a huge responsibility.
It is. But I appreciate your taking a chance on me, as always.
I was sorry to see Paul go.
Paul, and not for nothing, I read recently that we lost Dave Husman.
Okay.
And Huseman. I never knew how to pronounce his last name. We also lost David Parks.
Oh, really?
And in the last couple of weeks, we've lost 3 very important, long-standing members of the community. And look, it's part of life, but it doesn't mean we have to like it. These are people that we're going to miss. Paul Dolkos is just a gentleman.
Oh, that was the thing. He was a gentleman. I mean, he was somebody I wanted to be when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Someday when I grow up, I want to be like Paul Dolkos. I don't see that'll happening, but
you've met him though, right? You met him.
I've met him absolutely a couple of times. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
No, and the hobbies. This is the thing. I mean, he started in '73 when the only show was the National Convention. Now, pick your RPM. You can go to the Mid-Atlantic RPM, MARPM, in early September, down outside of Baltimore, and you can meet Bernie Kopinski, and you can meet a host of model railroaders that are there. Many of them published, many of them with legendary railroads, all sorts of cool presentations. I would love to be able to do it, but it doesn't line up. I have done it before. It's a great RPM meet, but any of these RPMs, any of the Springfields or the Rocky Mountain train shows, or there's so many opportunities to get together with fellow modelers. Dave Owens and the NERPM up there in Massachusetts and Connecticut. These are great opportunities. Springfield is a great opportunity. Make time to get to these places because if nothing else, it's just fun. It's inspiring and it's fun.
And this year at the Modeler's Life booth, we'll be giving away cheese balls, individual cheese balls.
Oh, that's something we should have been doing for years. That's a good call.
I know. Yeah, we're all gonna take turns. And we're gonna have a tray. Like the Playboy bunnies would have a tray, and they'd walk around with a tray. We're gonna have a tray, and we're gonna have hand out cheese balls in little paper cups.
I think that's a stretch.
What, the little paper cups or the tray?
There ain't nobody in the AML that's a Playboy bunny.
Well, no, but you got to have the tray.
What
did you get up on the wrong side of the bed or something?
Do I need to wear bunny ears? I'm not wearing bunny ears.
No, you just need to hand out with a smile. The key is you got to be pleasant while you're handing out the free cheese balls.
I got to be pleasant?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll work on that. I know it's hard.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be. You try to take. You know what? Try to take your lead from me.
Okay.
What are you laughing at?
I think it's fantastic. I love what I think. Dude, our conversations are it's just a good time.
It is.
It's all good.
It's yeah. Like, I mean, that is the magic of this hobby. The absolute magic of this hobby is how it brings people together. As I've done this podcast and as I've learned over the last 10 years, the absolute magic of this hobby is how it brings people together. It's magical. And when you stop to think about it, lately, for some reason or other, I don't know why, but I've been discussing Walt Disney World and Disneyland with of people, a couple of people, and at the end of the day, you got to remember this was built by they're giant model railroads, is what they are.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
They're one-to-one model.
Walt Disney was was a live steam model railroader. 100%.
Yeah, that's where he got the inspiration for Disneyland and Disney World.
Well, what a hobby that's got this kind of reach. We didn't even talk about. I was able to have a long discussed ex-Conrail employee, people that have either retired from Conrail or were Conrailers and ended up with CSX or Amtrak later. We had a session here last week, which we'll talk about that next time. Lionel, it blew my mind. It was an unbelievable experience, literally a time machine.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So we'll talk about that next time. But this is what I'm talking about. It's all right in front of us. It's all still developing, and everybody listening, a little bit of disagreement is a really healthy thing.
Oh, for sure.
We're gonna come through it. You have to see where you're headed, and that's not going to be where you think you're headed. It's going to change depending on other people, because life is about other people. It's not what you want. It's what everybody can see.
I guess at the end of the day, really, what I need to do is offer an apology to the NMRA in general for comparing them to the Toronto Maple Leafs, because at the end
might do it.
Because at the end of the day, that's an incredible insult.
It's funny that we spent so much time on that, because I'm not currently a member. I'm not even that well informed on the whole thing. It was a simple question on your part. What did I see? And I saw poor Gordy saying, I'm done with this for a while. It's too much. It's too much drama. I can't handle it. And so hence the whole discussion. But I think the point is here that there's no beef between Gordy Robinson and the AML. There's no beef between the Evel Overlord, Lionel Strang, and the NMRA. It was a couple honest discussion points that, look, like everything else on Facebook, when you see it on the internet, it must be true, right? Guys, that's not what we're focusing on here. It's all going to be larger than that. What's going on here is larger than, this is a huger change in the NMRA than has ever happened. Just like who predicted that digital photography would blow film out of the water the way that it did? Nobody. Well, guess what? When was the last time anybody has submitted slides of our model railroads to a magazine? Like, the NMRA has got it. They were still doing slides 7 years ago, buddy.
I know. Well, they just got to come to the.
They'll be fine.
Well, let's hope so. I don't necessarily agree with you 100% that way, because I feel, but I do know that there's a lot of people working really, really hard on making it fine. And,
good people.
And you
got to let experts be experts.
Yeah.
They're going to figure it out.
And the only thing I would close with is, I think if people listened long enough, they would realize I do a lot more positive for the NMRA than I do negative. I mean,
I think so too. I think you do a lot of positive for lots of things.
You
just happen to have some strong, stubbornly stated opinions. Which is why you and I get along so well.
Yeah, that's probably why we get along. All right. That's it. We got to go now. So, all right. This is on the free channel. So you give out our email address, would you?
I will. This is the Modeler's Life podcast. I'm Dave Abelies. We've been talking with Lionel Strang, the Evel Overlord. The email address, you let me get away with it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is amodelerslife@gmail.com.
It's Modeler's Life, not a Modeler's Life.
I still messed that up.
Well, and
I need to write that down.
Well, the problem is I didn't think the A would stick. So when I was making the email address, I thought over the years, if the podcast survived, the A would be dropped off and it would become Modeler's Life. So I made the
because it's Modeler's Life that's the website.
No, the A Modeler's Life is the website.
I can't keep this straight.
Oh, come on! You got to try a little harder. You don't have
right.
you don't belong to the NMRA, so you got plenty of time to keep that straight.
Exactly.
That alone shows people that should show people that we do this completely unrehearsed and completely off the cuff. We talk about whatever. We take shots at each other. We enjoy each other's company. And you and I would have never even met had it not been for the hobby of model railroading.
That's a fact. Yep, that and the internet.
And the internet.
And Rich Wisniewski.
And Rich Wisniewski, the Wiz.
The Wiz. You got to give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely. And we're going to do the thing where we did talking about layouts they visited. He gave me a great, well-prepared list of all the layouts that we need to discuss, which seems to be a list of about 3,000. And
well, you did ask the Wiz for a list. What did you expect?
I know. And I'd like to pick that up again with Tom Schmieder and Ralph Heiss and the Wiz and Doug Watts. And I'd like you to include you in that too, but then nobody else will get to talk.
Well, I promise I'll keep my mute button on.
Yeah.
I'll just stay in the green room while you guys are in the studio, and I'll just knock on the window when I have something to say.
Well, here's the most annoying part of my personality. Well, you know what? When you're not talking, you can be busy filling out your NMRA membership.
Well, hopefully by then that'll be taken care of.
Well, that's the point. Like, I'm just going to be on you like I'm going to be like a dog on your pants, just pulling on your pants.
A dog? What are you?
A dog with a bone. You know, like a little dog grabbing your pants, pulling on your pants. Of course, you don't have dogs. You won't let your kids have a dog, so that's another whole
You've got some awfully weird hobbies.
You won't let your kids have a dog, so that's another whole story.
I absolutely will, as long as they walk it.
Well, okay, then get a dog and let them walk it. You know who would look after the dog would be Susie.
You think?
Oh,
I think Pete's the biggest. Pete loves a dog.
Well, he'd love it, and he would play with it. But I think Susie would take a lot of responsibility for making sure it was looked after properly.
One of the challenges for us with dogs is traveling.
Exactly.
We travel all the time, and a lot of those places are not dog friendly. And leaving a puppy to go travel, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
another discussion, but it's a good point.
It is. It's something that you don't want to be leaving a dog alone and the problem is in your family the dog would feel so loved that any time you guys left it would feel
so lonely.
It's so lonely.
Can't understand. Right.
Exactly.
So we'll see.
So it's modelerslife@gmail.com. That's modelers with one L like Dolkos, not two L's like Long Valley.
Ooh, well done. Actually, that's got three, right? Because Valley's got two.
Damn, I was
you say Conrail lines.
Conrail lines, yeah.
Even though that's kind of a stretch. It's a little bit of a stretch.
Mostly I wanted to pay homage to Paul Dolkos because I don't know how many of his articles and pictures I've looked at, but it's been an awful lot.
No, we're all going to miss him. You know, and this hobby, for all the bright spots, one of the hard things is that you're going to miss the people that go. And he's a legend.
Yeah.
100%.
Let's see, what else is there? Okay, so we've done so then if you missed the email address, if you go to our website, amodelerslife.com, and scroll down a little bit, you'll see a picture of the moderately agitated mailboy in a particularly agitated state, and all you got to do is click on his picture, and boom, the email address is right there for you. And if you like this podcast, and you'd like twice as much podcasting every week, for just a few cents a day, you can click on our Patreon link, and every Tuesday, there's a second podcast. Now, that's usually you used to be on the paid channel, but we moved you over to the free channel, and Chris Adams has kind of taken your place over there. And he has a lot of great stuff to talk about on his layout, and other people, Chris Wayman, and all sorts of, primarily Chris people. I decided it would have to be people with the name Chris. No, and then Yeah,
Both great guys.
yeah, absolutely. And if you go to the T-shirt level, then you're entered into the contest that's sweeping the globe. Hey, dude, where's my shirt? And it's every $10 T-shirt level guy gets a T-shirt every year that's only available to Patreon members. The question is, the mystery is, when do I get my T-shirt? Like, hey, dude, where's my shirt? But I'm getting better at that. I finally came up with a really good system. What I realized was I didn't have a good way of keeping track of where I left off when I was making the T-shirts, and then I actually came up with a color-coded system that is actually probably the best system I've ever had. Do you realize this podcast is 10 years old now?
I think that's great.
It's spectacular.
Look, well, and it's 10 years of it's wonderful, insightful, which sometimes means a little contentious discussions. And that's okay. This podcast is the only one that pushes the boundaries like that. And I think at least for model railroading, I think it's fantastic.
That's my personality. My personality is to ask questions and not be particularly politically correct. I'm not a politically correct guy, and I'm happy. What? And I'm happy. Yeah. I don't spend my time like you trying to make sure I don't offend anybody.
Well, I always thought you were quiet and so supportive and had no opinions.
Why are you picking on me tonight? I don't understand.
Hey, if you're going to give it, buddy, you got to be able to take it. That's what you've been telling me my whole life.
That's right. Like I always said, buddy, you keep jabbing me with that stick, and you're going to get a two-hander across the back of the leg.
Yeah, I'll give you a two-hander. Go back and.
I'll take the slashing penalty. I'm happy to take the slashing penalty. Stop irritating me. You know who I got? I was thinking if I could feel just a little tiny bit better, I would like to take my portable recording device and interview Ted Pamperin right at his layout, because it's such a fantastic. There's a layout that I don't think hardly anybody knows about, and more people should know about Ted Pamperin's layout.
Well, and Dolkos actually wrote an article on it, and was a couple of years went by, and it showed up in Great Model Railroads. But the challenge with Great Model Railroads and Model Railroad Planning, they're both great magazines, but it's not a general distribution. So you don't get tens of thousands of people that pick it up. So Ted's railroad, to me, deserves a lot more credit. Another one is Dave Ramos's really interesting New York Harbor Terminal Railroad. So I'm actually going to be putting an article together on that this winter for Eric over at Model Railroader. And someday, hopefully, we'll see that in print over on that side of things. But Ted Pamperin is one of the most positive, wonderful, inclusive, and novel model railroaders I've met. He really does enjoy having different people come in and give running a shot. He's a wonderful guy.
That was the sense I got from him, and it's something I think it needs to be recorded more. And who else was I going to? Oh yeah, and another fantastic layout that I think I'm going to get him. I got to get him on the Fireside Chat. Somebody that needs to be on the podcast on a regular basis is Tom Schmieder, because he is building the most fantastic layout that you could possibly imagine. I mean, I would never do it in a million. Tom, I would never attempt what you're doing in a million years, but I take my hats off to you. And I believe with Tom's, how would you put it? Tom's requirement for perfection is going to make it one of the most fantastic home layouts in the Northeast within a few years.
I agree with you. I think it has the capability of being one of the best operating railroads in this area. I think it might be a definitive Lackawanna railroad. And we'll see. I think Tom is the right guy to take the challenge on. He is meticulous, but he's one of these guys that when he touches anything with his hands, it gets better. He's a craftsman in woodwork. He's a craftsman in plumbing, electrical. He builds, speeder cars. He can restore something. He's got a sandblaster. Everything's painted properly. The bikes are properly. Everything is perfect. His world is meticulous when it comes to technology and the crafts. And all of this is being reflected on his model railroad. He's also doing what I consider to be unparalleled work, especially with sound systems. through his side business, which is Scale Sound Solutions. It's incredible. So he's a great one to talk to. Very philosophical guy at his core. Seeks union, seeks positivity, but he's willing to call a spade a spade. And he and I have some great conversations on a regular basis. So I think he would be a wonderful addition to that. I agree.
What was I going to say? Don't tell me. Let me guess. I can't remember now. Oh, yeah. And so going forward, because it's basically right around our 10th anniversary, let's make sure that everybody understands, and I'm pretty sure you agree with me, the podcast isn't going to change. I'm still going to sometimes voice my opinions. I will still want to talk to everybody in the hobby. I want to ask all kinds of questions. I want to know about people's personal lives as well as their model railroading life, because it's fascinating. Last night not last night. Recently, I made a recording with a fellow named Ray Persing, who is now the AP chairman, and he's a fascinating guy. And we had a great conversation. Some model railroading, some about the AP, some about his personal life. I love talking to people and combining every other things other than just model railroading. Like just talking about how you can ballast track gets old after a while.
Well, I think that people matter, and if model railroading is the thread that keeps us all sort of interested in the same general ideas, but railroading is a lifestyle, and I'm going to argue that model railroading, if you let it be a lifestyle, your life gets better. There's a lot of really interesting, wise people involved in model railroading.
Yeah, it does. It gets wildly better. I mean, look how much fun I've had doing this podcast for 10 years. And let
alone building a layout and stuff. And there's rumors of you building some structures for layouts going forward. That's exciting.
Yes. I want to build just some structures because I want to do something.
Yeah. So we've got lots to talk about next time.
And if you ever want to see the behind the scenes of the Onondaga Cutoff and what Dave does behind the scenes, there's another Patreon channel you can join, and there's also a link on the Modeler's Life website all about the Onondaga Cutoff, the Patreon channel for the Onondaga Cutoff, which is a couple of videos every single month. How do you produce those videos? I have no idea, but you do a spectacular job of every month producing 2 videos.
I'm grateful for the mention. It's I'm down here anyway doing OC stuff, or I'm out watching trains, or I'm hanging out with the kids and thinking about train stuff. And you'll put together a couple clips and we edit them together. Your advice on editing is always appreciated, because I think you do a great job with this podcast. And what we end up with is a catalog, a library of videos that is starting to show people the background of the Onondaga Cutoff. And I think it's already a great treasure just for the historical archives of what we're doing here. And membership there is something that money gets plowed right back into the OC. And it's something we'll see on Facebook Lives and in videos going forward. And the next Facebook Live at this point is going to be September 7th. So this podcast will probably be posted after that, but so you can let me know what you think.
Yeah, we'll talk about that now. So I have one last question for you, Dave.
All right.
Have you ever wanted a T-shirt with a hot dog on it?
As a matter of fact, yes. Because
if you go to Midwest Model Railroad and go across their navigation bar to Other and click on that, the drop-down menu, you'll see the AML shop. And if you click on that, boom, you are in a cornucopia, a wonderland of AML merchandise. Hats, hoodies, T-shirts, mugs, and in there you'll find a T-shirt with a hot dog on it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So after you join the NMRA, go there and buy yourself a T-shirt with a hot dog on it.
I've already got a T-shirt with a hot dog on it because I was at Midwest Model Railroad.
Oh, okay. Well, then go and buy.
Which is awesome. I highly recommend anybody in the Kansas City area stopping by Midwest Model Railroad. It's a great hobby shop.
It's a fantastic hobby shop. And like I say, their URL is midwestmodelrr.com. That's it, Dave. I think we're done, buddy.
All right. Well, roger that. Looking forward to next time. And as always, my friend, great conversation.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
people that are building Conrail models while helping restore Conrail locomotives.
Now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Take it away, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Cranford eastbound's back in service. Plainfield westbound also back in service. Vendor had a good day out there yesterday. Hamilton number 3 is out. We think that one's going to be a brake adjustment, but we're going to check it in this morning. The vendor's on his way. At Westmont, we have the DCA out there today taking a look at the testing on the doors, making sure that the safety edges are back in tolerance after the outage yesterday. Newark Penn Station number 3 is out with a skirt panel reset, and Newark Penn Station number 17 is back in service after a reset this morning.
It's another Lincoln Homer.